I'll just go straight into the presentation. But before I commence with this presentation, I would like us to do one thing, one very important thing, which is whatever you think you know about BIM, just forget about it. Whatever you think you've heard about BIM, just forget about it. And take this webinar as the first time you are ever hearing that word, BIM. So there's a reason why I said that, because when I actually went for my master's degree in 2020, I also had an impression of what BIM was until I actually went through the one-year process and I found out that really BIM is more than what we always think it is. So let me just go straight to sharing my presentation. Okay, I think it's this one. Okay, can you see my presentation? Is it clear? If you can indicate, okay, that's fine. So, what is BIM actually? I think this webinar would I'll try as much as possible in a short time to explain exactly what BIM is, the processes, the policies, and what it takes to actually implement BIM. So in terms of introduction, I think Gloria has done a good job trying to introduce me. I have been in ACCL since 2007, so that's a long time. And over the years, I have a foundational degree in architecture, and then I have a master's degree in global BIM management, as well as virtual reality for architecture. I have a degree as well. I'm also a member of the Canadian BIM Foundation, so I have a certification with the Canadian BIM Foundation. So let me go ahead to describe what we are trying to do here. When we talk about understanding BIM and the use of BIM, we are trying to look for solutions. We're trying to achieve solutions. We're trying to gain success, trying to strategize ideas, also work, leading, and planning. So that is the idea of even thinking about wanting to implement a sort of technology into our profession, whatever profession it may be. So we are looking for solutions. What else are we trying to achieve with BIM? Increased accuracy, improved closeouts, improved quantity takeoffs for the quantity surveyors. I don't know how many architects, quantity surveyors, or engineers are in this webinar, but whatever profession you are, I am sure you are going to be able to gain something out of it. So this is really why we use BIM, for various reasons: efficiency, for time management, for improved closeouts, for reducing the cost of whatever it is we are implementing. I have to say, BIM is not only for construction alone, it's for various fields, manufacturing, infrastructure. So when we are talking about BIM, we should not always think that it's just for construction industry alone. It's also for various industries as well. Now, I'm going to take us through two parts in this presentation. The first one is going to talk about definition, standards, and BIM dimensions. And while the second part, we are going to be talking about BIM in the construction industry in particular. So going into part one, where we have BIM definition, standard, and dimension, I want to ask a question. What is BIM? What is BIM to you? So you can leave on the chat group what you think BIM is to you. And then from there, I'll be able to take you through exactly what BIM is. So if you could just leave on the chat what you think BIM is to you. If you've heard the word BIM before, what does it mean? Is it a word? Is it an acronym? Okay, Okoye Chukwuka says building information modeling. Yes, building information model, Oluwale, Skurat, Tola as well. So you're all right by definition. BIM is building information modeling. So let me now take you into what BIM is as in a definition. Yes, BIM means building information modeling. Now, what is building information modeling in itself? There's something called the bimdictionary.com. So in your spare time, you can go to www.bimdictionary.com. Now, that BIM dictionary will give you whatever definition it is you want about anything that has to do with building information modeling. So that's where I got this definition from. It says building information modeling is a set of technologies, processes, and policies enabling multiple stakeholders to collaboratively design, construct, and operate a facility in virtual space. Now, let me just break this down to like the barest understanding. What is BIM? BIM is construction in virtual space. That is what it is. So before you actually go out to do the physical construction, you are going to get a team that is going to build this edifice, structure, whatever it is you want to do. If it's in manufacturing, you are going to get people that are going to actually, in virtual space, build this structure before you now do it physically. So the process of BIM is like, it's construction in virtual space. That is really what BIM is. Construction in virtual space. Now, BIM is not just about technology, which we all think it is, because most times when you ask someone, what is BIM? Or have you used BIM? They say it's Revit, or it's ACCL, or it's Tekla. It's not only about technology. BIM is also about processes and policies, because you have to put those processes and policies in place first before you can make use of BIM. And BIM is universal. So if I'm working with somebody in Nigeria and I have other consultants that are outside Nigeria who don't even speak English, we have to have a way to communicate. And it's not only with technology, it's also with policies and processes as well. So that's what really BIM is all about: policies, processes, and technology. Now, I've mentioned the policy field, the technological field, and the process field. So this is how they all work together. Now, in the policies field, you have educational institutions, regulatory bodies, insurance companies, research centers, and all that. In the process field is where you have the architects, the engineers, the developers, the contractors, suppliers, and all that, which we are most familiar with. In the technological field is where you have software companies, hardware companies, network providers. So all these come together, and BIM is for everyone, because we all have to work together, both those in the policy field, the process field, and tech. We all have to work together in order to make this thing work, this process work. Now, in terms of the process of BIM, there is design, there's build, there's operate, and integrate. And if you look at this slide, you actually see definitions of what this means. You know, to design, to deploy digital techniques to create, which we are very used to. We are used to drawing and bringing out 3Ds and all that. Then the construction process itself. Then the operational process, which is done by mostly the facility managers, and integration of various services and spaces, which is actually the users and how they use such spaces. So BIM is for everybody. It's not just for the process field, which are most of us here, architects, engineers, and the likes. It's also for software companies as well. They too, they integrate BIM into their process to help us to execute. Now, there are various standards in BIM. And these standards are what we use to communicate. So we have what is called the ISO 19650 series. is a series of policies and standards that help us operate well within the BIM environment. I'll tell you what this ISO 19650 standard is. When it was published, there are various parts to it, and why it is relevant, and where you can also find it, as well as the difference between the past 1195, which is the British standard, which started way before ISO was now put in place, which is the international standard. So let me go straight into that. Now, the ISO standard is a series of documents that cover concepts and principles for information management at different stages of the building information modeling process. Now, in this ISO standard, which is an international standard, ISO being international standard, and then the number is 19650, there are 5 parts to it. Now, part 1 talks about the concepts and principles of BIM. Part 2 talks about the delivery phase of the assets. Now, BIM uses some certain terms. When you are talking about BIM process, you use some certain terms because it's not only for construction. So when they say delivery phase of the assets, what they are talking about is the construction phase of the assets. That is what it is, construction phase of the building. But because it's also for other disciplines, so they use some certain words, delivery phase, which is the process of documentation and all that. Then assets will be probably a building. If you are in infrastructure, maybe a road or a bridge. If you are in manufacturing, maybe a wristwatch. So BIM, because BIM is for various kinds of industries, they use some certain terms. So part 1 talks about concepts and principles. Part 2 talks about the delivery phase of the asset. Part 3 talks about the operational phase of the asset, which has to do mainly with facility managers when the building is now in operation. So there's BIM for that as well. So this part of the standards talks about that operational phase. Now part 4 talks about information exchange. Information exchange really is how you share information when you are, particularly when you are in the design phase. Maybe you are using various softwares, maybe you are using virtual reality, whatever it is. So that part of the ISO standard will be talking about how you manage information and how you exchange information. BIM is very information based, very, very information based. That's why the building information modeling, the word information there is very, very important. Now, part 5 talks about security-minded approach to information management. This is very vast, how to secure your information when you are passing it about and all that. So that's what part 5 talks about. Now, I have said when these parts were actually published, and they are usually revised once in a while. So if you go to the ISO Organization for Standardization website, you will see them there. Of course, they cost some money, so you have to pay for them to get them. So why is this relevant? Now, the ISO standard is very relevant because it's an international standard and it's used in all markets, international markets. So, like for instance, let me give you an instance. There's a way you number or you name your drawings when you have a BIM file. There's a way you name it, and if you are using the ISO standard, no matter where in the world you send that drawing to, just by the name, whoever receives it can tell you whether it's an architectural model or it's a structural model. It can tell you who actually authored it, who did it, and because the way the naming standard is international. So that is why these international standards are relevant, such that no matter where you are in the world, no matter who you are dealing with, you can be having consultants in Europe and you are in Nigeria or whatever, but it's the constant thing is that everybody would understand themselves. And it explains the basic rule of information management and projects, programs that are adopting BIM. And it's very simple. Some of the key concepts in the ISO standards are things like OIR, which is the Organizational Information Requirement. That is, the client you are working for has some informational requirements why they want you to maybe build something for them. So all the information that is required by the client's organization is contained in that OIR document. Then we also have the asset information requirement, the asset being the building, what they want in the building, project information requirement, what is required in the project, exchange information requirement, how you exchange information between yourselves, the client, your fellow consultants. Then you have the common data environment, which is, so I'm sure some of you have heard about it. That is your one source of truth. So you have just where every single information that is relevant to that project will be stored. So unlike those days when you send an email to somebody, the person will say, I didn't see it. No, if you are using a proper common data environment, everything will be there. So at any point in time, anybody that joins the project knows where exactly to get whatever information is necessary. Now, there's different stages of maturity in BIM, both the analog and digital information management. I won't bore you with that. That is very, very technical. So you can see the table I have here. It shows how all these things are related in the ISO standard. So from the OIR, you can get the assets information requirement and the project information requirement. This is usually done by the client. This information is given by the client. Then from these two information given by the client, you have a very important document called exchange information requirement. I want you to remember that, because this exchange information requirement is actually the first step that is taken when you want to start a BIM process, because it is like an RFI, request for information from a client, saying, this is what I want to build, and these are the things I need you to put in place to build it. So this is a very important document, the EIR. Now, from the exchange information requirement, other documents come up, which we'll go through. Then, of course, from the asset information, you can have the asset model, which is the AIM, and then the project information model, which is the Sorry, did somebody ask a question? I should go ahead. So this is also a relevant table. It tells you about different terms we use in BIM. You have the appointing party and the appointed party. The appointing party is the client. Simple. The appointed party is the consultant or the contractor, depending on the kind of process you want to use for procurement. So that there are different terms in BIM, but you can learn so much if you use that BIM dictionary. You will learn a lot of terms in BIM that will help you over the years. Okay, so what is the relationship between the PAS 1192 and the ISO 19650? Now, you hear some people that are conversant with BIM, they still use the PAS 1192. PAS 1192 is a British standard, and that was used initially when BIM started. You know, the British were very much into implementation of BIM, so they created a standard for it, which is the PAS 1192. However, over the years, it has been adopted internationally. That is why we have the ISO standard, which is the international standard. There is a lot of relationship between both of them, but the ISO standard has now refined it such that it's also acceptable to a lot of international markets, not just the British market. So that is the difference between the PAS 1192 and the ISO 19650 standard. So I have these other websites, you can check them out. They'll tell you about other standards of BIM. Why the ISO 19650 is the main standard, that main foundation for BIM. There are certain other standards that help you in BIM, talking about IFC, which is a much more complex and detailed part of BIM, talking about method and formats. So any of these sites, most of them are UK sites anyway, because UK, they are really deep into BIM. So most of these sites will give you more insight about BIM itself. Now, going on to the different kinds of BIM dimensions. Now, BIM is not just 3D, like we know. Most of us, when we talk about BIM, we talk about Revit, we talk about ArchiCAD, we talk about Lumion rendering. No, BIM is not just 3D. There are various dimensions to BIM. Even 2D is also BIM. You're talking about 2D drawings with the X and Y axis. It's part of BIM, because at the end of the day, from your 3D models, you generate 2D, which you issue out to consultants. In fact, sometimes some contractors will even ask you for AutoCAD, and from your BIM model, you can extract and get those 2D information. The second one is 3D, which is three-dimensional geographical structure. We have the X, Y, and Z axis. We are very familiar with that. The 4D has to do with time, scheduling, and duration. So when you are doing something like 4D, it's mainly for contractors. Because what they do is they take your program, in Microsoft projects or in Oracle or whatever format they have done it, and then they take your 3D model and they simulate it with time. So they are able to create scheduling and all that for their logistics and what have you. So that is mainly used by contractors, 4D modeling. 5D is cost estimation, which QSs will be very used to. This is where they can make out their cost estimation, get their quantity takeoffs and all that. And then 6D is for sustainability, talking about energy efficiency. We are all talking about sustainability now. So there are tools that can actually help you to generate reports for sustainability. 6D, do reports, analysis, and all that. 7D talks about facility management. There are tools for facility managers whereby they take your 3D model and they plug it in, and every single fixture and fitting in that building is documented. So if something goes bad, they know where to find it, who it was bought from, when it was bought, when it was installed. So there are tools for that in 7D. And 8D really has to talk about safety, evacuation, and all that. So these are the various dimensions of BIM. So it's not just 3D. BIM is really, really vast. So with that, I want to go into part 2. I don't know if there are any questions to part 1. I can entertain some questions at this point. So if anybody has a question, please, you can probably raise your hand, and I'll try as much as possible to answer it. Are there any questions? Okay, we have Alexandra. You can unmute and go on.
All right. Good evening, ma'am. I wanted to ask, you mentioned different Ds, the 2D, 3D, 4D, 5D. I wanted to ask if they can run simultaneously, like you don't have to wait for 3D to be completed before you go into 4D, or yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that question. Most of the time, your 3D, your 2D, you can do your 2D in another tool. You can do your 2D in AutoCAD, so that is fine. But when it comes to 4D, 5D, 6D, and 7D, it is mostly generated with your 3D model. So your 3D model is very important in the other dimensions because it's like a progression. It's a progression of where you were before. So they take that 3D model and then they have tools, various tools for these other dimensions that they plug in that 3D model into. So it is really, really very important that your 3D model is extremely intelligent. It is very important. So once you are doing your 3D, you have to be conscious about a lot of things, because a lot of people are going to take that 3D model and they are going to plug so many other information into it. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other question? Bolu, you have your hand raised. Bolu Adekunle.
Yes, ma. Good evening, ma.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. So my question relates to the points that you've made about involving the clients in the process. I mean, the clients is the initiator of any project, really. So my question is, are there like specific ways in which we can involve the clients more in the process, aside our traditional, I've done this so far, exports, show the clients, let them make their changes, and then I go back to my laptop and draw again. Are there any other ways that like BIM allows like the clients to be more involved in the process of developing the project?
Okay, thank you for that question, Bulu. So in recent times, working with ACCL, we've noticed that quite a number of clients are beginning to want to get involved in the process, particularly when they are organizations, like large organizations, you know, and then they have like a property department or what have you. They want to be much more involved. So there are tools for that. There are tools for that where you can actually include the clients in some of the processes. You know, they might not understand all the processes, but there are tools like, for instance, Autodesk Construction Cloud, for instance. We use it a lot in the office. So you can add as many people as you want to a certain project. So as they are added to the project, they see when models are being uploaded, they see when issues are being raised. They also see the issues that involve them and that they have to address. So there are actually BIM tools. I'll mention some of them as we go on. There are actually BIM tools where you can involve some certain clients. There are some certain clients that are beginning to insist on it because, you know, people are beginning to get to know more about technology and they all want to be involved in the process. Another way where we also involve clients in the recent times is in the use of VR. You know, sometimes some clients are really excited. They want to experience their development before it's even built. And that is one of the most fantastic ways to do that. You know, involve them in the process, as in, you are not just showing them 3Ds and pieces of paper. Once you take them through their building in the virtual world, they are so excited about it. So yes, clients are beginning to get more interested in being involved, and there are actually tools that we can use to get them involved. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, ma'am, it does.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I think there's no other question. Are there any questions in the chat? Let me see. Let me see if there are any questions in the chat. Okay, so Muhyiddin Abiodun says, good evening. Okay, my colleague and I project was centered around digital twin technology for enhancing project coordination within this. I'm really interested in this. Can you please give a career to becoming a BIM specialist? Okay, maybe this will be a chat we would have after the program. I can point you to some ways where you can get some experience in BIM and be a BIM specialist. Digital twin is a bit more technical, you know, so there are courses that actually take digital twin technology, not just BIM. So you would have to go deeper than just knowing the fundamentals of BIM. Okay, so let me continue to part 2, where we are talking about BIM for construction. So in the BIM phases in construction, there are practically 4 phases in construction. You have the information management, which is the first phase. And that information management actually runs through all phases because, of course, as the name implies, you need to manage the information as much as possible throughout the whole process. Then we have BIM for design, we have BIM for construction, and we have BIM for handover and asset management, which is facility managers they'll be interested in. So now, like I said, the information management is very key in BIM. That's why it's building information modeling. Information, very important, because the information you put into your BIM model is what is going to carry through. I'll give you an example. So there was a project we did, and one of the consultants, a services consultant, he actually put a certain kind of WC in his BIM model. It was like a Twyford brand. All the information was there, because most of the time these BIM models come with embedded information. And sometimes when we download them off the internet, we don't go take the time to check to make sure that the information that is in that model is relevant to our project. So anyway, he goes ahead, he puts in this family into it, was a Revit file, and obviously that particular element is carried through. The model was given to the contractor used it to extract information, and at the end of the day, he went and procured a Twyford WC. But the bill said otherwise. The bill said something else. But maybe he felt that was an alternative, cheaper. Maybe I'll just buy it. And he gets to site and everybody's wondering, but this is not what we specified. And he said, that is what is in your model. That is what I extracted. So sometimes we download these things, we don't take time to check the information. Apart from the information in the model, there are so many other information that are going about. Now we have to be able to collect them and put them in an orderly fashion where people can see it. Those are meant to see what, and those are not meant to see other information. You can manage those in the CDE, the Common Data Environment, as I mentioned. So information is very important. Now, how is this information? How do we get to getting this information that we use in BIM? There are two very important documents. One is the EIR. I mentioned it earlier, the Exchange Information Requirement. This document is generated by the client, who is the appointing party. Is the one that appoints. So the client generates this information, and this information is going to be like a request for information from whoever he's giving the job. That document would have so many information that he wants you to return to him with answers to. The document is going to have information about project location, the coordinates of the project. It's going to have information of what type of technology are you using in terms of software, hardware, different versions of these softwares and hardware. So many, is a lot of information. And then to respond, please can we mute if we are not if we don't have any question? Jayola, please can you mute? Thank you. So the response to this exchange information requirement is what is called the BIM execution plan. The BIM execution plan is a response to the exchange information requirement by the client. The client has sent you a document telling you, I want to use BIM. These are the things that my organization and the project will require. Most times, a BIM expert has to do this document for the client. Now, we have, over time, from practice, seen that a lot of clients don't have BIM experts within their organizations, and they are not as knowledgeable enough to know that they need this document. So what we've done in ACCL, for example, is that we have a template of a BIM execution plan, which we will share with the client, and the client will be able to accept or amend. Now, as the appointed party, it is not your responsibility to do an EIR. That is the client's responsibility. Your responsibility as the person being given the job, which is the appointed party, is to prepare the BIM execution plan. Now, this BIM execution plan, as I said, is a response to the EIR, and it tells the client exactly how you intend to execute the process of BIM. That is what the BIM execution plan does. And this BIM execution plan is a live document. It's not a one-time document. You create it before you go into design. You update it when you go into construction. It's also updated when it is handover time and then handed over to the client or the client's facility manager, because it contains a lot of documents and it also contains the life cycle of the project. So the BIM execution plan is very important. I think I've already mentioned this, the EIR, the purpose of the BEP, the project details, the technical part of it, the commercial part of it. So these are all the things that are contained in the EIR, and that document is originated from the client, from his assets, information requirements, and the project information requirements. That is where you get the EIR. So going forward, I don't know if Glory will be able to share some of this information, or I would make it available to you guys. Some of these sites, you can actually see example of a BIM execution plan on this site. So I can make this available, or I can copy it and put it on the charts, and anybody that wants to check it out can check it out. You have an idea of what the BIM execution plan looks like. And then, like I said, in BIM, we like a lot of terms: appointing party, lead appointed party, appointed party. So all these terms are used in BIM because it's not just for construction. So if you are looking at a BIM document, you won't necessarily see architects, engineer. No, you probably see things like appointing party, who is the client. Appointed party can be the architects, engineer, whoever, depending on the kind of project that is being executed. So those are the two documents that you require. Now, another thing that is very important in BIM for design is something called the BIM uses. There are primary uses of BIM and there are secondary uses of BIM. Now, looking at this table, you can see that it's divided into four. There's plan, there's design, there's construct, and there's operate. Now, before you use BIM, you need to know why you are using it. It is very important to know why, or else you will just be working aimlessly. So the information that is needed is what you are going to use it for. You are going to take with you as you start. You can be using it for the primary uses, which is design review, site analysis. You want to do 3D coordination. You want to do 3D control planning and maintenance and all that. Or you can also be using it for maybe structure analysis, lighting analysis. Why I'm saying this is because all these are very important, because these are the information you are going to put into your model. Now, if you don't know what you are going to use the BIM for, then you will just be doing a 3D model that is not intelligent. And if, for instance, a quantity survey picks up that document, that 3D model, and he wants to take quantities, and you didn't model it in the proper way, then he can't take his quantities. But when you know that this model, I'm going to give it to a quantity surveyor, there's a certain way you are going to model it. So that is a different discussion for another session, because modeling is different from actually knowing the fundamentals. So, like I said, the level of information need is important. And this would have to be represented in your geometry, your properties, and all whatnot. So it will help you to reduce wasting your time modeling what is not necessary. Like if you are not a manufacturer, why are you modeling the screw in the window? It's not necessary. It's not your job. That's not what you want to use the model for. You use the model for, you model according to what you want to use the model for. So that is why we have this in design. Before you start, you have to know. Then, secondly, there is the strategy you have to come up with. The naming convention, the location of the coordinates. Now, I want to bring out this particular issue of location of coordinates because it's very important. There are times when we have worked with other consultants that you take your architectural model, for instance, you send it to them, they send you back, for instance, maybe a structural model or an MEP model, but they didn't use the coordinates that are in your model. So this is what happens. When you import the structural model into the architectural model, you will find out that the structural model is somewhere far away from the architectural model. That is because they did not use the proper coordinates. And in that BIM execution plan, all this information is there, which you have to share with them. The floor and the floor layout and naming convention for floor plans, the proper use of entities. When I say entities, it's families for some softwares like Revit, because I use Revit a lot. Classification systems, you have to know, are you using Uniclass or are you using Omniclass? You have to know all these things. We're talking about the real life world here. So all these things have to be in that, in your BIM execution plan. All these have to be there. You have to be able to know how to differentiate between load-bearing and non-load-bearing entities, as well as fire safety, materials, and spaces. So all these are very important in your BIM model when you are designing. Now, talking about tools, I'm sure there are various tools for BIM. I've only here mentioned the tools that I have personally used over the years, but BIM has so many tools. Now, for authoring, Autodesk Revit, Graphisoft ArchiCAD, Tekla is mainly for structural engineers, and even SketchUp now. I know the first time when I started using SketchUp, it wasn't as intelligent, but now there's so much BIM capabilities in SketchUp. So these are for authoring, and when I say authoring, this is what you use to actually build the 3D model. So these are the authoring tools. We have issue and tracking management tools, which also act as common data environment in most cases. You have Autodesk Construction Cloud, BIM Collab, Graphisoft BIM Cloud, which you use with ArchiCAD, then Autodesk Construction Cloud with Revit. BIM Track is more of an open BIM software. The same thing with BIM Collab. BIM Collab and BIM Track, they work with IFC, so it's an open BIM software. You can use it with various softwares as long as you convert to IFC. In terms of 3D simulation, now keep in mind there are so many tools. I'm only mentioning the ones that I use frequently. Enscape, Twinmotion, Lumion for 3D simulation. For 4D, remember I mentioned, is mostly for contractors. They take the 3D model and then they use either Synchro Pro with these two, Project and Oracle, and they use it to simulate the building process in 3D. So you can actually see as the building is being built as according to the program that the contractor sends to you. For 5D cost estimation, I've used Solibri. I'm sure any other QS here would say the other softwares that can be used for quantity takeoff as well as for cost estimation. And then for model validation is what we usually refer to as clash detection. So you take various disciplines, you put them together, you look for where clashes are. So I use Navisworks, Autodesk BIM Collaborator, and also Solibri too can do that. For project management, there is a site called Planelly. You can check it. It also has capabilities to do your BIM execution plan and your EIR. You can use this Planelly. Trello is more of managing tasks, like you're doing project management. You can use Trello. And then for specification, I use MBS. That is a Uniclass specification. Now, I'll take you through a typical BIM workflow for design. Very simplified. I tried my best to simplify it as much as possible. So you get your EIR, exchange information requirement from the client. From there, you as the appointed party, the consultant, you create your BIM execution plan. And then once you have created your BIM execution plan and other relevant documents go with it, you now go to the authoring tool to start doing your modeling, your 3D, whatever it is you want to do. From there, you move to the model validation and issue tracking management. So this is back and forth. So by the time you do your clash detection, you check your model. If there's an issue, you send it back, you correct it, you send it back, check it again. Once it is fine and it is okay, you now have a resolved PIM, resolved project information model. That is where you will now use to generate your 3D, to generate your graphical data, non-graphical data, like bills of quantities, like 3D models, 2D drawings, and all that. Now, all this is stored inside your common data environment. All these processes. Sometimes you can do it away and you have to come back to store it into the CDE. Now, the CDE can be a reserved server in your office, or it can be a software as a service. Some people would say they prefer to use it as software as a service because it's in the cloud. You can, anywhere you can access it. So this is a typical BIM workflow for design. Secondly, this is a typical BIM workflow for the construction. Now, like I told you, the BIM execution plan is updated once you get to construction because various things will be different from design and construction. But then you now have a model that is integrated, structure, architecture, MEP, interior design, whatever, all integrated together. Now, your authoring tool is still in use to correct things on site because, of course, when you get to site, some things change. So it's a back and forth process, after which you have your updated project information model again. You can generate all the information you want, 2D drawings, 3D models, all move to the common data environment. And then it is that model that you use for your 4D simulation, your quantity takeoff. Even the contractors use it to take their quantities because they also do builds. And then there's a software called Dalox that is used for site management. It's more of, you can have it on your tab, you go to sites, there's augmented reality, you can actually superimpose the pipes and you'll be looking at it. So this is for field management. I have some snapshots here for 4D simulation and quantity takeoff. These ones I did from Solibri, and then the animation, I think you cannot be. I did this with a Synchro Pro. Now for the handover process, I'm trying to be conscious of time because we have to ask questions. For the handover process, it's practically almost the same process. The only difference is that when you are done with your updated project information model, you'll be left with an aggregated asset information model. Now that asset information model is what your facility manager would use to extract information. I'll show you an example of the kind of information the facility manager can extract. Now, this is some information that the facility manager will extract from your model. You have the name of the item, maybe VRF AC or fire hose reel, for instance. It will tell him where it was bought, who manufactured it, the serial number. All that information will be extracted from your 3D model. It's and it has to be a very intelligent model. So your facility manager can actually use this to manage the building. So if there's a burnt bulb somewhere, all he has to do is to come here and he will find out where it was bought. And he can easily just go there and ask, or ask for something that is close to it. So he doesn't have to take it out looking for the serial number. Okay, he can't find it. So it's very important for them to have a model that is very intelligent. Now, I don't know if there are any questions before I run through a sample project There's a sample project I want to run through, but I'll take some questions here before I do that. Okay, Bolu, go ahead. Or David, go ahead.
Good evening.
Sorry, good evening.
Good evening. Please,
Good evening.
I would love to ask, being a BIM specialist, is it specific to any BIM tool or it's general?
Okay, thank you for that question. Now, BIM tools, you can use whatever BIM tools you are comfortable with. You know, like I told you, there are a lot of BIM tools, but these ones I showed here are the ones I use. These are the ones I use. Like Tekla, for instance, is really for structural engineers. So it's not what I use every day, but I have a knowledge of it. So being a BIM specialist, like now I have a master's in global BIM management, which means global. I'm not only going to be working with consultants. I work with contractors sometimes. Sometimes I work with the clients. Sometimes I actually interface with facility managers because I have an idea of various tools for various disciplines. Let me put it that way. So you might be a BIM modeler. You might be a BIM coordinator. You might not necessarily be, you know, the word, if you go to, maybe you can check online, professions in BIM, building information modeling, you'll see that there are different professions. There are some people that are just BIM modelers. They don't know all the softwares. They probably just know Revit and ACCL, or maybe only Revit. There are some people that are BIM coordinators. They might need a little bit more knowledge. Apart from the modeling tools, they would need, a BIM coordinator will need knowledge in issue tracking management. So you might know some tools. Then there are some people I know that they only deal with Autodesk products. They don't know any other one. So I'm not saying that you should know all the softwares. No. Know some, be good at it. That is my advice to you. Just know some and be good at it. And then as a BIM manager, if you want to be a BIM manager, because you can be a BIM modeler, you can be a BIM coordinator, you don't need to know all the aspects of BIM. You just know the ones that are relevant to you. But if you want to be a good BIM manager, you have to be like up to date with technology. Like all the time, I'm researching what is the recent technology, what can make the work better and faster. So I can easily learn softwares. So it depends on the individual and what you want. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Any other question before I move on to the sample project?
Yes, ma'am. This is Bolu. I have some questions.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I said, I have some questions. I don't know what you have left to present. So some of these questions you might be able to answer them later on. But I'm just going to like build them gradually. So my first question is how the company you work in, ACCL, how you have managed to integrate this into your workflow, especially in a situation like the descriptions that you've made so far. It seems like something that a lot of people have to be, you know, onboarded onto. So how have you managed that relationship with people who are maybe not so knowledgeable about these processes, and how have you continued to integrate it into your process without resorting to our normal like basic use of these tools? Then my second question would be,
let me answer
okay,
one.
all right,
So that I'm clear. So integrating it into ACCL, I have to confess it hasn't been easy. So you have to be convincing, and you have to show why this process is better than the old process. You know, you have to do that. Then again, a lot of times you don't expect everybody to learning at your own level. So what I usually do is that I take it in chunks. Like sometime last year, we had software training for our most basic software, which is Revit. We use Revit in ACCL a lot. So we had like 6 weeks training for staff, So at least you take it in chunks. At least if they can properly use the tools that are their everyday tools, that's the first thing. So there's training. We do in-house development sessions. And apart from BIM, we also do other topics, but we also throw BIM in there. And then, of course, not everybody can be a manager, so to say. So if you know you have BIM modelers, just let them be trained and know how to model well. If you know you have somebody that has the potential to be a coordinator, then you give them a little bit more training on that, because there are various levels and various hierarchies. I model, but not as much. I model, but not as much, because there are younger architects that are more into the modeling part of it. So because being a BIM manager can be very time consuming. Sometimes you find out that you don't even have time to sit down to say you want to model, but then you have to have time to check what has been done. So that's how we've been able to manage to integrate this process. It's still something that is ongoing. It will take a while, and like technology keeps on changing so fast. So we are just trying to catch up. I hope that answers your question. At least your first question.
Yes, ma'am, it does.
Okay.
All right. So I think my second question is a good follow-up to this, because of like what you mentioned about some people being modelers and managers and things like that. So my second question is, what do you think are some like baby steps that we can take? The majority of us here are students, and I think it's safe to assume that the majority of us have mastered or are good at the modeling part. Like we've essentially learned how to draw the building on the computer, to put it in simple terms. So, for example, someone who is working with a BIM manager, what do you think are some tiny things that we can do to our modeling that would allow it to be more up to par with like the normal, or what BIM was like the intended use of BIM? I hope that's like clear.
Okay, I think I understand what you are saying. I understand what you are saying. So once I go to the sample project, you see some things that you can start to implement when you are modeling. At entry level, like most of the entry level architects we have, most of them are BIM modelers, because even to do the global management course that I did, you have to have some level of experience, because they are not going to teach you the fundamentals of like I'm an architect. They are not going to teach me the fundamentals of architecture. So you must have that basic knowledge of architecture, engineering, or whatever before they even take you in, because once they start to layer in the technology, it's left to you to think of, okay, I have this knowledge of architecture, or I have this knowledge of engineering. How will technology help me to make it better, more efficient? The first slide I showed you, more efficient, look for solutions. That is all technology or BIM is doing. It's making you more efficient in your profession. So if you find yourself in an environment and then you look for the certain loopholes and say, okay, this thing, if I do it this way with technology, where does it get me to? Like I told you, BIM is construction in virtual space. So the technology is heavy. It's heavy on BIM. But first and foremost, that fundamental of your profession, you have to know it. It's very important that you have to know it. But when I take you through the sample project, you see some ways, some things to look out for based on the software you are using. What are the things to look out for? Because BIM is really about information. Really, there are some people that are not even interested in your BIM model or the fact that I can do very nice 3Ds. It's the information you put in there that they want to extract. And if they get that very nice BIM looking model that can do nice Lumion, Twin Motion, and Escape 3D, but they are not getting the information for it, then the model is of no use to them. So that's why I also mentioned BIM uses. You must know what you are modeling for. Sometimes when you are when you are not modeling for maybe quantity takeoff, there are some things you don't do. There are some things you can do in Revit where you can merge your finish with your structure, and when you render it, it's beautiful. But when your quantity surveyor takes that model, he can't use it. He's not going to be able to use it. So that is one thing that we have to put in mind when we are modeling. Particularly, we've seen a lot of instances where people coming into ACCL, they actually do a full test, Revit test. We want to know your proficiency in Revit. Most times, when we look through those models, we know that when you come in, we have to take you through training. So it's just what it is. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Okay, so let me quickly go to for the BIM for design. So this is a project that we did in, it's still under construction, almost completion anyway. It's just part of it that is still left to be done. It's 10 floors. There's a basement floor, 9 suspended floors, and a service floor on the roof. It has 1 level of basement. There's a canteen on the upper level and all that. About 7,000 square meters. An office building in Victoria Island. So particularly, it's a glass box, really. Glass box with this screen facade on it for made of this thing. So what we did in this design really was it's been for design. So 2D, 3Ds, quantity takeoff. So we gave the model to the QS to take his quantity. We did issue it to the contractor, but unfortunately he didn't know how to use it. So I'll only talk about the aspect of what we used it for BIM, which was for design. So of course we had to identify what we were using it for: cost estimation, for site analysis, design reviews, which means we had to have a full model, design authoring, 3D coordination, because most of the time, apart from doing crits, checking our drawings, we usually use VR to do some visual analysis and corrections. So of course we use it for 3D coordination as well. So it's only up to design we stopped because the contractor couldn't use it for the construction and upgrade fees. So that is where we stopped 3D coordination. Now this is just a screenshot of, like I told you, we usually use Revit a lot in ACCL, although I can say ArchiCAD is good for architects. It's a much more friendlier software, but we use Revit anyway. So like I said, if you look at these screenshots of the Revit page that I put in here, you can see that behind we have like the floor plan, but I've called out this property. This is the property of a door. Now, every single information you see here is very, very important. You can see the classification code, Uniclass door sets. You can see this dimension for the door. You can see the other identity data, the subframe, whatever it is made out of. All this information is inside this model by just clicking that door and checking the property. Now, all this information will automatically generate schedules for you. By the time you go to schedules, it will automatically generate it. And it's all this information you have put here that are going to be reflected in that schedule. Now, some people have the bad habit of Instead of using this, they use text. So they will draw the door, and then they will now use text to fill in all these properties. Your model is not intelligent, meaning that if you change that door in future, all the information you've typed manually will not change. The only way it will automatically change is if you do it this way. Once you change this, any instance of that door that is in your model will automatically change its properties, because that door now becomes intelligent. So if you change the height, anywhere that that door instance is found on your model, it will automatically change. So that is where you start to save time. And then you start to have accurate data, whereby, okay, I've changed something here, and it has changed in the schedule, it has changed in the elevation, it has changed in the plan, just with one click. So those are the things you have to look out for when you are modeling. What are you using these things for? This is a door that is located on the first floor, and it has a tag, a number, it has a fire rating, everything is contained here. So you can't miss it. If you want to create a specification document, the Uniclass classification is there. So it will just automatically generate all those things for you. Now, on this side is what I have some plugins for BIM Collab. So I'm doing some, while I'm drawing, I'm also doing some clashes detection, and it's automatically saving the pictures where these issues are. So if you click on it, it will take you to that part of the model and all that. So those are the kind of things that make your model, your work easier. In fact, when we went to site on this project, we had almost no issue with documentation. You know, like you get to site and you see a column where you never planned to see it before. That didn't happen here, because even before going to site, we had already done all this. We had already seen all the issues that were going to come up. Now, this is the architectural model when it was finished. This is the structural model for that same building when it was finished. It's already showing all the piles and all that. And then this is the services drawing with all the AC ducts in place, the plumbing ducts, the water supply, all there. So at the end of the day, what we do is we link this model together, and then we had a federated model. Now with this model, we're able to do VR, we're able to take all the information we needed, amend those things that needed to be amended, correct those things that needed to be corrected. So by the time we got to site, it was so fast, because it wasn't like, stop this floor, we have a problem with a beam. No, we had already seen it before going to site. So that is the beauty of when you use BIM in the proper manner, you would enjoy it, especially when you move to sites. Everything will move smoothly. So this is an example of a clash detection report that I generated for this project. You know, I ran the clash. Now the clash detection report will tell you, I ran structural slab with MEP ducts to see where there were clashes. It will give you the pictures. This is Navisworks. It will tell you where they are. It will tell you the grid lines they are. So you can pass this report to the structural engineer and to the services engineer. So they start to correct these things. They start to correct them before you even think of going to sites. Site is the last thing, because really you're already on site. Using BIM, you're already on site. So you're already seeing these things and you can easily correct them. Save your clients some money. So at the end of the day, when we had coordinated, we started generating things like floor plans, all the tags are there, all the specifications are there. We generated sections, elevations in 2D. These were all PDFs at the end of the day. So all these were generated from your 3D model. We created sections of details, isometric view for clearer understanding. We did some renders of some spaces and all that. We even inputted images to be able to tell the contractor what to do, to give him a clearer picture. We have some blow-up details of ceiling, walls, and all that. So all these were generated from the 3D model. It's not like we finished the 3D model, took it to AutoCAD. No, everything was done in that Revit file. So if you pick up that, anybody picking up that Revit file will see all this information, and according to whatever you want, you can get it out of there. These are all the schedules that were generated, at least a sample of the door schedule. This is a sample of the cutting wall drawing and some other schedules, finishes, and all that. All generated from that 3D model I showed you earlier. Of course, we generated 3D views so that people would have a feel of what it's going to look like at the end of the day. And then finally, these are the live pictures of, like I told you, we still have to do the screen. So, but we've done basically the box of the building. And because there was minimal correction, because we had done most of the coordination with BIM, you can see the 3D and the real building. It's not too far off. Because by the time you have done all that, you don't have to get to site and make a major change that when your client comes by, he says, this is not my building now. But you've done all that virtually. So that's what you have at the end of the day. So I'll take some final questions before closing of the seminar. Anybody have any other questions?
Okay.
Me again. So I mean, my last question is like a more question for you, and it's the simple question is, how did you get here? This doesn't, from the way you speak, it doesn't sound like something that you stumbled on or something that's just happened by chance. It sounds like you're very passionate about it and you want to see it grow and develop. So I think the question is, how did you, for anybody who might be thinking about doing this, or anybody who has been inspired by listening to you tonight, how did you get here? What choices did you make and things like that? In any way you can answer the question, really. Yeah.
Okay. So how did I get here? I think two things. Yes, like you said, I'm passionate about not just architecture. I'm passionate about technology generally. That is one. Passion for what you want, what you like. Then you have to actually be intentional. You have to be intentional. When you want something, you now have to look for how to achieve it. And you have to be intentional about it. Don't just stumble upon it or say, I'll do it later. Be intentional and go for it. Go all the way. You know, like I told you, I'm passionate about technology. And it's not just BIM alone. I do a lot of coding and software generation and all that because I'm just passionate about technology. Anything that would make my work, my life easier, I'm always ready to research about it and get answers to it. So you have to be intentional about what you're passionate about. Be intentional about it. Go for it. I mean, you can either make it or you fail to make it. I mean, the guy that created the light bulb said he tried how many times? Over and over again. Until one day he got it. He got it right. He got it right. So I think that I just like technology, and I really love architecture. And I just try to make sure that I am up to date with what is actually going to make the work better. I hope that that is a good enough response to you.
Thank you. Yes, it is.
Thank you. Okay, so Shagun.
All right.
Okay.
Good evening, man.
Good evening.
Thank you for this wonderful session. Thank you for this wonderful session. So my question is, actually, I'm still in my undergraduate phase, so like studying civil engineering. So please, I want to ask, the career, like, what's the career path to for like really structural engineers like to this? Because I think most people are
Well, I can barely hear you.
into like doesn't really understand the BIM something. Like I want to ask, like, if contractors now can't really like understand, I don't know, is it that it is not really like welcomed like for, I mean, for construction part or something? Because even I went for a program for this conference, I think day before yesterday, and they spoke about this being too, and I noticed that most of these people, when they were talking, it has not really been like accepted or something. So I want to like clarify that now. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'll try and answer. I'll try and answer this. What I was able to hear. Your network wasn't very clear. So, BIM being accepted or not, I have to be honest with you. BIM is expensive. It's quite expensive, and a lot of people don't see the advantage to it yet. But it's quite expensive. I think that is one of the reasons why a lot of people are not really interested in like following through with it. But I can tell you that the amount of time, effort, money saved, there are so many advantages to it. But one of the downsides, or let me not use the word downside, let me say one of the things that discourages people is, first, the cost of running a full BIM project is not cheap. Secondly, the technology, the know-how is not really there. You know, there are a lot of people that don't really know how to implement it properly. If you go to countries like UK, because they've been doing it for years, you know, they've been doing it for years, so they'll master it after a while, you know. But I'm really hopeful that in Nigeria, if one at a time, I can educate people one at a time. I really believe that it's worth it, because for a very long time when I was using AutoCAD, I resisted using even a BIM tool. I resisted it, but after using it for a couple of years now, I don't think I want to suffer myself going back to be drawing 2D. It's like you are something that you can do in 1 hour. You spend days doing it, because I mean, when I draw the plan, I'll project it, then I'll draw the elevation, then I'll project it. No, but with BIM, you just draw one wall and you have your plan, you have your elevation, you have your section. So I think education is also key. If people are well educated about the advantages of technology, because yes, people say technology has its downside, AI and all that, but technology has its good side. Anything that has its bad side has its good side. So education is one of the reasons why a lot of people don't really embrace it. For instance, we work with Julius Berger a lot in my office, and the first thing Julius Berger will ask you is, I want your BIM model. So it depends on the exposure of the contractor too. Julius Berger will always ask you for your BIM model, because it makes their life easier when they collect it. They go there, they make it, they refine it, they upgrade it, and they use it on sites. So it's because they are educated and about BIM. So I think one of the downsides is education. People are not properly educated. And yes, BIM is not cheap. It's quite expensive, but I believe that there are ways around it. I mean, if you can't afford Revit, use ACCL. If you can't afford ACCL, there are other softwares that we don't even talk about. There are so many softwares they use in China that they use for BIM, but it's what people are used to that they continue talking about. So I don't know if that answers your question. Shegun. So if I've answered your question,
Yes,
Shegun.
ma'am. You've answered my question. Ma'am, please, there is this other question I had initially that for a structural engineering student at like
Yes.
university something, like what was the career path like to like the steps to follow to actually be good in this aspect now?
So once you finish your masters or whatever, you can actually just apply to any school that is teaching BIM management. Most of them are not in Nigeria actually, so they will take you. They will just ask you for your transcripts, your degrees. They just want to know that you are a professional, because you can't really be going deep into BIM if you are not a professional. You wouldn't understand some of the fundamentals. So, like for Ziggurats now, once you are done with your first degree or your master's or whatever, you can just apply. You can just apply. There's nothing. It's because BIM is for everybody. BIM is for everybody. So it's not. They are not going to say, okay, you study structural engineering, so you can't do BIM. No, it's for even clients. There are some clients that don't really have, maybe they have degrees in managerial, what they want to know about it because they want to implement it in the organization. They'll take you in. They'll just ask you for some requirements. So I don't know if that answers your question, so that I can ask somebody else to speak.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you. So Joy, Joy, you can speak.
All
right, thank you, Shegun. Hello, Joy, are you there? Okay, Joy is not there. J Legend.
Yes, ma'am, I'm there. Good evening, everyone.
Okay.
Good evening.
Okay, good evening.
Sorry, I'm there. Good evening, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so my question is, as an undergraduate in architecture, how do I learn BIM modeling, like even as an undergraduate, especially in Nigeria where BIM projects is not really in use and expensive? They see it as expensive. So how do I learn and how do I like enter into that career path? Is it advisable?
Well, as long as you are a professional in the you're aspiring to be a professional in the built environment, you have to learn BIM. There's no way you are going to go around it, because it's just it's like, it's not even only for construction, like I told you. Even manufacturers use it. So because, like I said, it's a process. So it's not like okay, this is a tool that a certain number of people can use, some cannot use. So as you are aspiring to be in the built environment, if you want to be relevant when you get out of school, you just have to know it. Now you can start with actually learning, starting to experiment with different softwares, so that at least you'll be proficient enough to start as a modeler. And like I said, there are lots of resources online. If you want to learn BIM. There are so many of them that you can just keep yourself abreast with what is going on. And that is the most important thing, because like I said, technology is really, really moving fast. Like there are some things that, like things like level of detail, LOD, people talk about in BIM, it's not relevant anymore, because over time they've seen that it's not even the level of detail that's important, it's the level of information that is needed at that point in time that you are doing that model. So technology is changing really fast, and you'll be surprised that if you want to get a very good and relevant job, even if it's not in Nigeria. I remember there's a structural engineer that I used to work with, and for a long time I used to tell him, go and learn this BIM, go and learn this thing, go and learn this about it, use software. He was so resistant. Eventually 2 years ago he relocated to US, and he now started struggling. He started struggling because he couldn't cope. But when we spoke later this year, it was like, yes, that thing you were telling me is true. So there's no education that is irrelevant. So now that you're in school, I would just advise you to start to immerse yourself in software, technology, and just get a general idea of BIM. Go to BIM dictionary, read about it. You will see terms, you research, and just get yourself very familiar with it, because when you get out, you are going to need it more and more. Clients are beginning to ask us for it, as in officially ask us for it. Sometimes we are not the ones that even initiate it. They actually say we want to implement it, even if they don't fully understand it. So I hope that answers your question, Joy.
Yes, ma'am. That answered my question.
Okay, thank you. So I'll take J Legend now. After him, Olawale.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. My question, you've answered an aspect of my question earlier on how we relate the software with other disciplines on projects, like other technical stakeholders on the projects. Like you were talking about your experience with Julius Berger and how they directly request for your model.
Mm-hmm.
My question then would be for other critical stakeholders like the MEP engineers, the other civil engineers. There are still some practitioners that are yet to embrace BIM in practice and for coordination, especially for me as an architect. So I find it difficult coordinating projects because I have to step down the project details to a format that those other guys will be able to assess and then give me the input that I require. So how do you or do you have a strategy of how you would bring them to accept and start using BIM models for easier coordination of project between all the people that would be working on the project? Because I found that difficult to do personally. There's just some of them have just told me strictly just step it down to AutoCAD 2D. Just I don't, otherwise you won't get the job within the schedule that has been planned. So I just wanted to know some strategies that I could use to bring it in, because even my office is interested in switching totally to BIM, and also they want to pay, but it's just that some of the guys that are working with us are not totally up to it at this time. So I would just like to learn this. Then my second question quickly will be the role of AI in this. Is it going to complement, or is it going to take over, or what is the future like for us here? Thank you.
Okay. So your first question about trying to integrate other consultants in the use of BIM. So we at ACCL, we struggled with that for a very long time. I know we started using BIM tools. Okay, let's just say BIM authoring tool, as in Revit. We started using Revit like probably 2012 or so. And for a long time, we struggled with it because when we issue out our models, the consultants will convert it to AutoCAD, they will give us AutoCAD. So we now enforced something, and we told them that if you don't give us Revit files, we'll give you two options. It's either we stop giving you jobs, or we recommend somebody to train your guys. Okay, there was a third option, or we actually get modelers and you pay them. So those are the three options we gave them. So either we stop giving you jobs, or we will send you to, we'll give you a contact of somebody that can actually come to your establishment and train your guys. Or if you don't want to do that, then we will recommend to you some BIM modelers. They will model for you, but you will pay. So you can give them AutoCAD files, they will convert it to BIM models, and then you give it to us. Because like you said, it was becoming very cumbersome when you send somebody a Revit file in a architectural Revit file and they give you AutoCAD. It means that we in-house have to start to model those components, because if you don't do that, I can assure you, when you get to site, you will see a column where you didn't imagine a column.
Exactly.
Or even if it's not the column and you can identify the column, you will see a beam so deep inside your room that you will not believe that that beam was there before. So those were the options we had to give them, because it was becoming too strenuous to us. And at the end of the day, right now, all the consultants we use, they give us Revit models back. That is how it is. But to some extent, you have to make them see why it is important. You have to make them see why it is important to doing it. Or probably you tell them that you get a BIM modeler and they will have to pay the person to do it, because it makes everybody's job easier. And it even saves the client, because if the client can already envisage his space, and then you go to site and you are not breaking things up and down because somebody put a beam where you did not know, because you saw it in 2D. You thought it was a 250 beam and it ended up being 900. So it makes everybody's work easier. So those are the ways that we have been able to manage it. And at the end of the day now, all the consultants we work with, they give us Revit models back. That is the only way to work and work efficiently. Your second question was, remind me of what your second question was again.
Okay, it's on the role of AI, whether it's going to complement our work or take over.
So I don't know. AI, the way I see it, this is my own perspective of AI. It's not a general perception. You know, when the internet came out, people panicked. What is internet? What is web? It's going to cause trouble. I think that is part of the issue with this AI trend. Yes, it is more intelligent than the internet when it first came out. But I see AI complementing what you do. See, in everything, there's a good and bad. It's just like how people use internet to defraud people and create all sorts of crimes. But there are people that use the internet to actually better themselves and make things easier for themselves. So the way I look at AI is what is meant to complement whatever we are doing. Like I did mention that I do a lot of coding and I create softwares that help me in my day-to-day. It's AI I used to learn it to. I just use AI strictly, and it gives me all the information I want. So it depends on how you use it. If you want it to complement, I don't ever believe that AI is going to fully take over. I mean, the information that AI is giving you is information that human beings over the years have collated and they've put back into the system. So it's just because it's generating it so fast. AI makes a lot of mistakes too. There was a day I gave somebody a breakdown. I had to do some accounting and I gave somebody a breakdown. And the guy came back and told me that the total was wrong. And I said, no, the total is very correct. And the guy started arguing that, no, he's wrong. And I said, but I now took my calculator and I calculated everything again and it tallied. And I said, how are you getting your result? He said he put it in Perplexity and ran it, and this is the answer I gave him. I said, AI is not always correct. Go back and check it. And then he sent me a screenshot of what the AI told him, that, yes, I'm wrong, you are correct. This is the correct answer. I said, don't ever put your 100% trust in what AI is telling you. Because AI, even when you open ChatGPT, you see it at the bottom that I can make mistakes. I'm not accurate. So AI will complement whatever you want to do. It's what, mind you, it's what you ask it. It gives you a response. So I don't see AI taking over anything. I only see it complementing what you do. I hope that answers your question. So I will take Olawale last.
That's fine. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
All right.
Hey, good evening, Ma. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Ma, for the insightful session. So quickly, I want to note something. Like before now, I thought BIM was just like a software in Revit. Like you use everything BIM is in Revit. That we are yet to unlock that aspect of Revit. But now I understand that BIM is actually a process. So my question now is, you talked about entities like families, about how to get the actual entities for your model. So my question now is that, do you get them from like the manufacturer that you are going to like consult when you want to do your construction, or you get a model, then you impute your own parameters? So like, how do you get your entities?
Okay, so there are three ways. There are three ways you can get entities. That is you use Revit, right? Do you use Revit?
Yes, ma, I do.
Okay. So, like for instance, if you are using Revit, you know there are places where you can download Revit models, so you can get them from there. But I would advise that when you get them from there, please open the properties and check all the information that is in there. Is it relevant to what you need? Like I said, your level of information need is very important. Look at the entities inside that model. Most times, if I download a Revit model that looks similar to what I need it for, I will go to the entities and I will delete most of those things out. I will delete them out. Then I can start creating my own within it. That is those your parameters. I start to create the parameters that I want. The second one, like you mentioned, you can get them, you can also get it from the manufacturer. But that is when you know the exact manufacturer you want to use. And if that manufacturer has BIM families that you can use. Now, luckily, a lot of manufacturers are beginning to create their own BIM families that you can actually go to their website and find. Because I know initially when we started using Revit, it was difficult getting families from manufacturers. We had to create our own. But now a lot of manufacturers are getting their BIM models done. But even those manufacturers, you have to be careful. You have to go in and look at how they've modeled it. Some of them employ people to do these things and they don't do it properly. So you still have to check it. Now, when you are using a manufacturer downloaded family, just make sure it is that manufacturer that you are going to use eventually. If not, if you decide to use another manufacturer, there might be problems. Or you can put it as an approved equal. So, okay, I'm using, let's say, sanitary ware, for instance, Gebrit, but you can buy Vitra or whatever. So you can put an approved equal. That you can also get from manufacturer. But the most important thing, like I said, always go and check those properties just to make sure it is what you need. So that if you are going to use it like on a big project where you have, like I'm doing a 35-story building now, and that 35-story building has how many toilets? About 8 toilets on each floor. You can imagine if I miss one, specification for one, is disastrous. So they will just go and purchase what they are not supposed to purchase and multiply it by the number. So downloading families, you can, but make sure you check them. That is the advice I will give you. Sometimes all those families are even too, they are not modeled well, they are too heavy. They make your files heavier and ridiculously heavy to move about. And before you know, your file will crash. So I hope that answers your question. And that will be the last I'll take for today.
Yes.
All right. Your time, Ma. Glory had to attend to some other things, so guys, let's move the responsibility of closing us out. So, I just want to say thank you on behalf of us at LearnArchi and everybody that is on the call for taking out the time to share your very valuable experience, very valuable lessons with us, taking out the time to share these things with us. And I believe that everybody that has listened so far, it has been a good use of your time. There are still some questions on the chat box, but of course we have run past the time we set out for the session, so everybody has to go.
You can collate these questions for me.
Yes, yes,
I can and send it to Glory.
Yes, no problem, Ma. We'll see how to get that done. For the sake of those on the call who do not know what LearnArchi is about, LearnArchi is a growing community of architecture students, architects, and designers, and we are committed to helping people grow and learn their design skills outside of their classrooms, outside of their studios, and outside of their schools. So this is the inaugural monthly webinar, but we plan to have this every month, and we have already started planning towards next month as well. We have resource channels where people can find tutorials, courses. We take some courses and classes ourselves just to equip people better as well. So for the people asking about BIM modeling and learning out, like getting started on some of these softwares, books to read, places to look at, we can provide those for you as well. So if you have not been a member of LearnArchi, you might want to look into joining so that you can get like structured access to some of these resources. So again, thank you very much, Ma, for your time. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for participating, for asking questions, for reacting. I'm sure it was very encouraging. So till we see again, if you're on LearnArchi, don't forget we have our design review sessions every Saturday evening, and we have software classes every Sunday evening. If you are not on LearnArchi, that might be a good reason for you to join. So thank you very much, everyone. We hope this has been a good use of your Friday evening. Goodbye.